Welcome to Global Investment Voice, your premier podcast for diving deep into the world of investment migration. Are you dreaming of a second or third passport? Then join us as we traverse the globe, exploring the ins and outs of the U.S. EB-5 immigrant investor visa, uncover the secrets of golden visas, and delve into the many residency and citizenship by investment programs. Each episode is packed with exclusive insights from top industry experts. Whether you're an investor, developer, or a visionary entrepreneur, we're here to guide you through the complexities of global investment migration. And who better to navigate this journey with than your hosts, the dynamic legal duo of this industry, Mona Shah and Rebecca Singh. Plus, hear directly from a lineup of global investment migration leaders. So, buckle up and tune in to Global Investment Voice, where your global investment journey begins and expands.
Davos 2026 will be remembered as the moment when a G7 leader accidentally articulated the intellectual case for the entire RCBI industry. And for those who are not sure of the RCBI, I'm talking about the residency and citizenship by investment industry. Back to discuss this with me is someone who just joined us recently and who was actually at Davos 2026, Iliana Oris Valiente. Welcome back.
Hello, Mona. Thank you so much for having me back.
You're back so soon, right?
I am indeed. There's lots to report on.
I know, but you did say that you were on your way to Davos, and we did not expect what happened. I thought you were going to come back with a lot of boring stuff. I know AI was big on the agenda, but nobody expected Carney's declaration.
No one expected this statement from Canada. I mean, I've been attending in Davos for a few years now, and usually Canada is in the picture, but definitely stole the show this year.
I know. And I think it really can be described as Mark Carney's speech, meaning it could be described as the most consequential speech in the World Economic Forum history, because without even mentioning Trump by name, he declared the end or the death, I don't know if that's its appropriate word, of an American-led world order.
That's right. A lot of the pundits are essentially saying that Carney said the quiet part out loud, in that the global world order has shifted. And rather than pretending that it hasn't and sweeping things under the carpet, what is the impact of that? What is the impact on nation states?
You mean he basically said what everybody else was thinking?
That's right.
Yeah, it is radical. It's a total reimagining of the way we have really learned that the world order has been. And I think, and I know we're going to discuss this in future, but I think we're going to see a lot more changes. But I know President Trump wasn't very happy with that. I mean, he did respond, and then disinviting Canada from his board of peace, threatening Canada with 100% tariffs.
Indeed. We'll see how all of that shakes out. Not my place to speculate, but definitely my place to interpret trends and what they might mean.
Well, actually, I mean, talking about interpretation of trends and things, and it takes somebody who's really understands not only the whole citizenship by investment phenomena, and it is something that when people hear citizenship by investment, residency by investment, they think, oh, well, okay, that's a certain creed of people. It's not. People have been investing, for example, in EB-5 for the last 20-something years now. And so I think a speech like this and the whole idea of the rest of the world actually silently or openly agreeing and nodding, it's a direct implication, not just for EB-5, but the whole RCBI programs and really the fundamental right to live in different places, multiple places, I should say.
Multiple places, essentially as an insurance policy. So what was interesting about the conversations this year was this topic of sovereignty, which bubbled up in any which way that you can imagine, whether it's national sovereignty and what it means for a country like Canada, what it means in the AI world. But you can apply that exact same logic to sovereignty at the individual level. And when you think about the globally mobile individuals, they're effectively purchasing insurance policies and the right to live, the right to work in multiple jurisdictions and creating that diversified portfolio effect. And that is exactly the intellectual scaffolding that Carney had laid out in his call and in his pleas, essentially, to encourage nation states to rethink sovereignty and what they need.
Well, before we go into that a little bit more, because I know that Davos is where Henley and Partners released their Global Mobility Report of the year, which always raises eyebrows. There was a lot about AI, right?
There was. I mean, you couldn't escape the topic of AI on the promenade, especially everything agentic and everything scale deployment.
Wow. Well, I know that AI and the nomadic life have totally changed the way people are thinking. So I do think, Liana, we could perhaps save that for another podcast.
Oh, well, we absolutely can. I mean, when I think about AI and the intersection of mobility, there are a couple of aspects we might be able to play with. One is it's changing the nature of work. And if the nature of work is changing and it increases the likelihood that any individual could be traveling and doing their work remotely, that's worth exploring. But then there's also the question of AI applied in the mobility industry itself to streamline a lot of those processes. So I think that would be worthwhile. And then maybe the third aspect that we could do a deep dive in is once again related to this sovereignty and the new world order conversation and what that means for national economies. And then once again, from an investor standpoint, if you're looking at which country to hang your hat in, so to speak, how does the country's investment and adoption of AI feed into your decision making?
Oh, wow, Iliana. We do have a lot for our audiences in the future.
I look forward to that one.
But getting back to this, because I always look forward to seeing what the mobility report is from Henley and Partners. And the way it's always, I think it is almost always released during Davos week. At least it has been for the last few years. But they had some very interesting stats which came up. Who are the risers, the biggest risers, the biggest losers? One of the biggest losers from last year was actually the UK, believe it or not. And it looks like the next year we are going to see Canada join the same ranks.
We might. And I mean, to contribute to that, Canada recently announced the ending of their startup visa program. I mean, to be fair, the wait times for that program reached almost a decade. And realistically, no investor, no entrepreneur is going to put their entire life on pause while they wait for a determination that's taking that long. We haven't heard quite yet what the new alternative replacement program might be. The government has hinted at policy initiatives to attract foreign talent. I think that was further reiterated at Davos with the importance of it, but we haven't seen that translate into a published policy quite yet.
Right. We actually have delved into some of the issues relating to Canada lately, and I will be asking your opinion on it at a future date because as a Canadian with real inside knowledge, we have a lot of listeners who are very interested. But interestingly, of course, Henley do like to say this. Another of one of their losers is the US, the EB5, because of the hostile environment and unpredictable policy of what's going on in the US right now. But I will say that although they have said that, we are still seeing a phenomenal amount of people wanting to file in the US, no matter what President Trump does. So I'm not quite sure where Henley and Partners are getting their stats from in that.
Well, two things can be true. Two things can be true at the same time. So on the one hand, as an investor, the last thing you want is volatility. When you're purchasing into a government program like an EB5 model, you're purchasing stability. You're purchasing this idea that your business is subject to rule of law and you can plan and you can anticipate what's going to happen next year, the year after. But on the flip side, the other thing running through every investor's mind is how do you diversify? And having access to the US markets, especially given their AI dominance and potential trajectory on that front, becomes a bit of a necessity. So regardless of the amount of volatility and turbulence, I think that's why you're experiencing those two realities at the same time.
I totally agree. And going back to Carney for a second, his articulation of sovereignty in a multipolar world, it does go back to all people who are wanting a second citizenship or another residency, not for moving purposes, but for insurance purposes or actually business purposes. I, for the first time, have been hearing how people are actively wanting one of the African passports, for example, just so that they can go and do business in certain areas in a more clandestine manner because they feel like they'll go under the radar with an African passport. I don't know whether that is true or not, but it's an interesting proposition.
The visa-free travel proposition continues to hold true, especially for those who need the quick mobility. And so that's why I think you're seeing that.
Yeah. The other winners that Henley spoke of, I believe, were the UAE, which has done phenomenally well by the Brits. Half of Britain has gone out of the UAE. Then you have the EU golden visa programs, Portugal, Greece, Malta, not so much, but Italy for sure.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I mean, with Malta being in the headlines of late with the rulings declaring that access to the Schengen zone is limited, that's put a damper on things, but definitely seeing renewed and continued interest in some of the other locations you mentioned.
Yeah. Let me ask you, was Carney making, I don't know, was he making a bid for people to come to Canada? Because right now they need entrepreneurs. They need the tech people from the US to come over.
Oh, Canada absolutely needs talent. And in the latest mandate letter he issued to IRCC, so the Immigration and Citizenship Department in Canada, he articulated very bluntly that we need to work on attracting a blend of immigrants to Canada and a specific focus on attracting technology, entrepreneurship, investor type talent, because we do need that additional injection to continue to power the growth of the Canadian economy.
Yeah, I think what was the quote that he said? Canada has what the world wants. And
Correct.
then you quote energy, minerals, educated population, fiscal capacity. But when you hit on minerals, now you know why President Trump wants you as the 51st state.
Oh, absolutely. We are resource rich, land rich, educated population. So it's a pretty compelling place to be, despite the fact that for the past couple of years, the value of the Canadian passport has declined in a couple of the indices from, a top 7 passport down to, I think it was number 14 or number 18 in a couple of years.
Yeah, I also read that there was a philosophical shift, again, articulated by Mark Carney. For example, citizenship previously indicated you had a singular loyalty to one nation state. When you become a citizen of the US, for example, you do your Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. When you become a citizen of the United Kingdom, you do your allegiance to the Queen. Well, was the Queen, now the King.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now the emerging view is more that citizenship is just your portfolio of rights and options. Very different.
It is. And I mean, it's a philosophy that I've subscribed to for many years. My friends have joked that, Iliana, you have been a global citizen quite literally since you were born. And I deeply, deeply hold that view that this idea of citizenship as we know it is a very artificial construct to begin with. Borders are man-made things and borders get redrawn. If you go back and you look at the history books over a 50, 100, 150, 200 year horizon, think about the number of countries that have had their borders redrawn. And so therefore it's a bit of a simplification to assume that citizenship equals by default loyalty to just one nation state. And increasingly we're seeing that decoupling, where people are saying, well, I might have my business registered in one jurisdiction. I might have my personal tax residency in a different jurisdiction. And I might spend a portion of the year living in a third jurisdiction or fourth jurisdiction that is more aligned to personal lifestyle goals and objectives. And so the ability to fragment one's life and to create that portfolio, we've seen it for years as an emerging trend. And what Carney said essentially just provided a new way of thinking about it at a larger scale.
Oh, so you're saying the multiple citizenships being traditionally seen as divided loyalties is now shifted over to risk management and, basically global mobility.
Absolutely. Global mobility is the rational response to uncertainty. If you think back to COVID, And how many people found themselves stranded when a country border shut down? Imagine that scenario playing out again, but not due to a pandemic. And with the current state of affairs in the world, it is not a stretch to say that you may have border shutdowns and closures and restrictions that come nearly out of left field. And so how might you prepare for that? And so those who have the ability to are setting themselves up by having this portfolio approach.
Oh, wow. It's just all so incredibly interesting. Was there anything else of significance? I'm saying what else? I'm sure this really did take up most of the stage. But was there anything else of significance which came out of Davos of 2026?
I think the big themes were definitely the shifting world order and everything AI. I mean, the conversations from artificial general intelligence and when is it coming, to the implications on the workforce, to the rise of robotics and physical AI. I mean, robots at dinner parties were seen.
But I have one question though. I mean, most of the time when you see these statistics that Henley's put out or Arton put out, they do really sort of focus on a millionaire surge and a millionaire's wave. But as we've discovered and as we've discussed, nomadic life, the way we are seeing it now, isn't there just for millionaires. It's for many other categories. It's no longer that niche. Did you see that type of trend emerge?
That type of a trend is definitely there. It wasn't covered in the Davos discussions, but when you look at countries and the way that they grow their economies, you can tax your existing citizens, you can borrow debt that then your future generations are repaying. You have internal growth that powers your own economy, or you can start tapping into the globally mobile demographic that is coming into your country and creating an entire new revenue stream for a nation state. And countries are realizing that, wait a second, why aren't we rolling out the red carpet to attract that population? And it does not have to be limited to the ultra high net worth. It also extends to the AI researchers and the developers and other professionals who've done really well in increasingly lucrative fields that are coming into a country, spending time there, spending money through the various programs and application fees, through the real estate leasing and purchasing that they're doing, through all of the ancillary spending that they're doing in that region. So suddenly you're seeing nations rolling out marketing campaigns effectively to attract a broader swath of that traveling population. So it's definitely worth paying attention to. And increasingly, because of accessible air travel and because of the proliferation of these remote work and digital nomad type visa programs, you're seeing a broader class of people who are saying, wait a second, I want to be more geographically mobile. Hence the statistics that show, 40 plus million people are already identifying with the digital nomad label. Another 80 million people are in the aspiring nomads category. And that is orders of magnitude higher volumes than traditionally what the residency and citizenship by investment programs have catered to or have thought of within their demographic. That's why I've been calling this broader cohort of people the flexible class, because it really is far broader.
And Henley projects there to be an unprecedented wave in 2026. So let's see. Iliana, thank you so much for coming back on Global Investment Voice, and we look forward to discussing AI and other great topics with you again in the future.
Wonderful. Really look forward to coming back.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of Global Investment Voice. A huge thank you to all our listeners for tuning in and sharing this journey with us. Curious about unlocking the potential of global migration and citizenship? Make sure to visit us online at mshawlaw.com and globalinvestmentvoice.com. Dive into our extensive library of podcast episodes. Stay ahead with the latest in migration news by signing up for our insider newsletter. Don't forget to connect with us on social media. Find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook to keep the conversation going. Remember, the insights shared in our podcast are for informational purposes only, so please seek tailored legal, financial, or investment advice where needed. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, keep investing smart and living well with Global Investment Voice. We'll see you on the next episode.